see your mother. You were only given one, go see your mother. And you know that you will never have another. Go see your mother. Go see your mom.
Welcome to Jewish Boy Calls His Mother. I'm your host, Sadia, and this is my mother, Ima. Hey, Ima.
Hi, what shall we fight about tonight?
I don't know. Let's talk about something more light. I was hoping
like in family fighting.
In family fighting.
Yeah.
Ugh.
By the way, I've been watching Gordon Ramsay's the kitchen, what's it called? Kitchen Disasters.
Kitchen Nightmares.
Kitchen Nightmares, yeah. You know something? He's not just a chef, he's a fantastic psychologist and social worker.
Yeah.
He's a family therapist.
I love watching that show. It's just such a train wreck sometimes. I think that's what makes it the appeal. I'm always curious sometimes after the show to Google the restaurant and see if it's still around.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're still around and they did a good job. And others just it failed miserably the next year. And some it's like they did a good job, but they sold the business anyways and they moved on.
Yeah.
That's always good. Were there any of these reality TV shows when you were growing up?
The only thing they had Edward R. Murrow had I forgot what it was called, where it was he would interview people on a closed circuit television, which was of course new technology for the time. And he would interview them in their home on this closed circuit television. I forgot what the name of the program was. We watched it a lot. I mean, he interviewed all sorts of people like Liberace. And as a matter of fact, what they did was one time, there was an episode of I Love Lucy where in the I Love Lucy episode, they included Edward R. Murrow's television program. And the gist of the episode was that Edward R. Murrow wanted to interview Desi Arnaz's, once it was Ricky Ricardo was the character he played, and Lucy and the Family, and the Mertzes. And it was a really funny episode. And just before he's supposed to interview them, like a couple of days before they're scheduled to interview, they and the Mertzes get into this horrible, horrible fight. And needless to say, while he's trying to interview them, you put together if you're familiar with the I Love Lucy series, you can imagine what happened during the interview with the, fighting between them. Anyway, towards the end of the interview, they feel really badly about the fight. And they start to cry, and they start to make up and hug each other and cry. And Edward R. Murrow is trying to continue the interview, and they're just crying and hugging each other. So Edward R. Murrow always finished his show with good night and good luck. So he's trying to continue the interview, and he just can't do it because they're so busy apologizing and crying and hugging each other. So he just turns to the audience and says, "Well, America, good night and good luck."
Would you ever want to make a TV show? Like if you playing imaginary right now?
Oh, I would love to. I think I would love to, really.
What would it be about?
Well, let's put it this way. I remember when you kids were growing up, that's when they started some of these reality shows. And so your father and I were talking to some friends of ours, and we said, you know what? I bet if we put a camera in our dining room or around our house and just recorded every day here and tried to put it on television, people, first of all, it would be a total comedy. Secondly, people would say, "Oh, come on, this is off stage. There can't possibly be a family like this."
Were you ever?
And our friends all agreed.
Were you ever on a TV show or on the news?
A couple times. I was well, first of all, when I was a little girl, our kindergarten class was invited to come to, I think it was was it channel 13? It might have been. I think channel 13, and to do a music program in the morning on on their television station. And I remembered what we did was we took these paper towel rolls and we decorated them. And part of the music program was that we tended to play them like trumpets. We blew into them. You know, instead of singing out loud, we sang into these, make-believe trumpets that we made. And that's how we performed. And I remember at the time I was going through eye therapy. It was shortly after an operation. I think I was in kindergarten. It might have been kindergarten. It was shortly after my eye operation, and I had a patch over my left eye. And I felt so badly that we were going to be on television. It might be close-ups, and that here I had this patch on my eye. And but my mother told me, "Don't worry, it'll be okay." And then after the program, my mother told me that the camera angle didn't show the patch at all. It was taken from the side. Yeah. And then I remember after we performed, we had the pleasure of meeting Miss Nancy, who was the creator and teacher of Romper Room. And we all knew Romper Room. We all watched Romper Room. I remember she came on the set and greeted us, and we were we were so excited that we got to meet Miss Nancy in person.
Was she your favorite TV show growing up?
Of course, yeah, Romper Room. It was basically it was a television preschool.
So like it would just be like similar to maybe Sesame Street or Miss Rachel today or anything of the sort?
Yeah, she did a lot of creative projects with the kids, and she did like art projects. She read stories. I remember for music, she told us if we didn't have drums, we didn't have real instruments, we should go to the kitchen and get pots and pans and spoons. And I remember getting one of my mother's pots and pans and a big spoon and walking around, and she would tell you children at home can walk around the room, while we walk around here at the studio and bang on your pots and pans. And that's what I did. From walking around the living room, banging on the pot, with the spoon. I think I must have been about 3 or 4 years old, something like that.
Because I remember when I was younger, I used to have a list of TV shows to watch, and I knew like which channels to watch what, so I could watch cartoons from 1 o'clock till about 6:30 in the afternoon, 6:30 at night. Mm-hmm. And I knew if I went to channel 54 for these shows, then channel 45 on these shows. Did you do anything like that?
Oh, sure. All kids do, but we didn't have this. We didn't have the variety. Mm-hmm. That kids, especially now, wow, with cable and everything, wow. It's like an infinitesimal, and there's Disney Plus, and there are all these. Now you have whole channels that are dedicated only to certain types of broadcasting. Like you have the old movies channel, you have the children's channel, you have Disney Plus, and we didn't have that. We had 3 channels. That was it. It was channel 13, channel 11, and channel 2.
Interesting.
And those were the only 3 channels. And children's programming was like Romper Room was in the morning for preschools. See, I understand that most parents in those days did not send their children to nursery school. Most children started school in kindergarten when they were, I think, turning 5 turning 6. You had to turn 6 that year to be in kindergarten. And it started out as half-day kindergarten. We only went half-day to like, I think maybe 12:30, something like that. And then in first grade, the first 6 weeks of first grade was also only half-day. And then after the first 6 weeks, then they broke us into the full 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock day.
When would school start though? Would it start the day after Labor Day?
Yes, it
Okay.
traditionally started the day after Labor Day, and in Baltimore, but in Maryland, we finished usually June 15th. Was
Okay.
usually the day. Now, New York schools, I remember growing up, friends of mine who had moved from New York schools were notorious for going all the way till maybe June 25th, something like that.
Hmm.
In fact, would you believe when I was growing up, New York public schools had a reputation of being the best in the country. This is during
Really?
the 1950s and early 60s. As a matter of fact, there were friends of my sister who moved to New York, and many of them, when they moved to New York, found that they had to repeat a grade because the New York schools were so much more advanced
What
than the schools in Maryland.
What caused the decline in New York?
Oh man, what has caused the decline?
Yeah, for you just mentioned the concept of in the 50s and 60s, New York was number one in education. So follow-up question is, what caused the decline?
I know you don't want to get political, but
okay, you know what? Never mind then. I'm not getting into this.
Leftist policy.
Leftist policies. You mean integration?
No, of course not. No. Leftist policies of I say it
pushing the school like No Child Left Behind Act kind of situation.
And what was that? What did you say? I'm sorry.
No Child Left Behind Act situation.
That type of thing. Again, like the some of the socialistic policies that basically led to the to the disintegration of the family.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah,
like LBJ's situation of attacking. Okay.
And a lot of people feel that also that when they took when they took prayer out of public schools, that caused like a further disintegration because there was no like moral, like sense of morality anymore. Which actually, like I said before in a previous broadcast, but if you read about what the Supreme Court did, the Supreme Court never really took prayer out of school. They just said that the state had no right to mandate a specific prayer from a particular religion. But they never said anything about not having like voluntary, prayer or a moment of silence or anything like that. It's just like it's like what people always do. They pick up the ball and they run with it. And they extrapolate it to what it's not. Like for example, we discussed this before about the 10 Commandments, the court saying having the 10 Commandments in your school is a violation of church and state. If you read Article number 1, Amendment number 1 of the Constitution, it reads, Congress shall make no law regarding the establishment of religion, nor impede with the free exercise thereof. It talks about Congress. The United States Congress cannot impede in free religion or, make an established religion. It says nothing about school districts. It says nothing about states. It says nothing about schools. That's not even part of the equation. But people picked this up and just, I don't know what they did. They just totally misinterpreted it. I'll give you another example of what people misinterpret. The day right after Obamacare was passed, I had a doctor's appointment, with one of the younger children. I think you were already grown or something.
I was in college.
Yeah. And when I came into the doctor's office, the receptionist told me that it was shocking how many parents came into the doctor's office that morning thinking they did not have to pay their copay because the United States Congress had passed Obamacare. They thought it was socialized medicine. They thought it was all going to be for free now. And she had to tell them, no, it's not for free. And you still need your insurance. And you still, people totally got the wrong idea.
I mean, honestly, when Obama was talking about student loans and consolidating them, I was confused because I was trying to figure out, like, are they going to forgive them? Do we have to, like, what can we do? And I contacted some people that I thought were going to take care of it, and I didn't realize, but it was actually a scam. And luckily, I picked up right, like, at the right time and just said thanks but no thanks, bye. But that's
what these people advertised themselves, they were going to help you get rid of your student loan.
yes. And then I was like, okay.
What did they say? What they tell you? What they say to you?
They started talking like, oh, we're going to go ahead and help with the loans. We're going to consolidate. If they contact you, just ignore them. Like, we're going to take care of everything. And just give me your social security number. Once they said that, I'm like, okay, buddy. All right. That's a thanks, but no thanks. And then I just moved on. Yeah, it's there's more to the story. I'll tell you later. But like the people that were telling me to do it, it's frustrating when you're trying to, when you know what's the right thing to do and you have idiots trying to tell you what's right, and if you tell them they're wrong, they get all offended. It was the whole thing. I was
Go ahead. I have to listen about scams, like scams similar to what you almost fell into. It was before all this, before people became more knowledgeable about all the scamming that was going on. It was it was when people were just getting their home computers.
Yeah.
Like, what would you say? We got, like, what was it, around 2000? We got our computer.
About 2000, yeah.
Computer. Right. So I get a call. Mrs. Ancaster, this is microwave, and this is Microsoft. This is Microsoft. Something wrong with your computer. Need your password. So I said to them, well, what's wrong with my computer? And then he says, Mrs. Ancaster, this is Microsoft. Something wrong with your computer. Need your password. So I said, okay, I heard that, but tell me, what's wrong with my computer? Mrs. Ancaster, this is Microsoft.
It just went on repeat until eventually.
Just hang up the phone.
Because they're idiots. They're just told to get a line and that's it.
Well, in those days, when you hung up the phone, like if you were angry, you could really hang it up back.
Oh yeah, I know, right?
Now you can just break your finger pressing a button. I mean,
it's like it's silly nowadays. Back then, you could really slam it.
Or if you slam down your iPhone, you'll break it.
Exactly. Yeah, you touch the iPhone the wrong way, it'll break. When you taught the 70s and the 80s, did you see a decline in decency? I know we're going a little backwards, but you were talking about the 70s and 80s when you used to teach, and I was curious enough to know, like, did you start seeing, like, from decade to decade, from kids to kids, you're like, oh, they're getting worse and worse?
I noticed my first year teaching job was in Baltimore City, and I
we have the pictures
in the inner city, and it was sad. It was very, very sad that I saw a teacher beat a kid with a yardstick. Momish beat him with a yardstick. There was a little boy, I was teaching music, and there was a little boy in the class who was really like acting like totally very strange, just out of control, calling out, running around the room, screaming. And I had experience before working in an institution for, at those days, they called it mentally retarded adults, but learning disabled adults. And I was looking at his behavior one day, and it hit me. I said, this child is learning disabled. He shouldn't be in the school. He needs to be in the special ed school. He shouldn't really be, he shouldn't really be here. So this was a fourth grade class of a kid running around screaming, calling out, just totally out of it. So I approached the principal. And I said, such and such. I said, I was noticing he's mentally retarded. He should be in a special school. And the principal said to me, that's right, he is. He's lucky if he's functioning on a kindergarten level. He should be in a special school, but he's not. So what are you going to do about it? That's what he said to me. You had kids that really needed special services, like this young man who were just being thrown into the mix. You had fights breaking out in the middle of class. The teacher would be trying to teach, and all of a sudden, one kid would just jump on another and start beating him up. I saw a teacher this in the middle of like a math lesson. I saw this girl jump on this boy and start beating him up. And the teacher, it was a male teacher, ran between them, and he had a yardstick. And as he was trying to break them up, he was hitting her on the tush, like standing between them and hitting her on the back of the tush with the yardstick to try to break up the fight.
Wow. So I guess some of these schools have been bad since day one. Did anybody
I don't know if I told you about the incident with the girl that I shouldn't have slapped her, but I couldn't get her off this boy otherwise. What happened was that with the auditorium.
No, tell me.
Okay, what happened was we had just finished the program in the auditorium, and I was about to leave, and I'm looking, and most of the classes had left, but there were like a whole like group of kids, like a lot of kids that had just been kind of like, I don't know, the teachers kind of just left them behind. They just didn't go with the rest of the class. They stayed behind, and it was like a riot scene in the auditorium. There was no teacher there. Kids were getting into fights. So there's one fight. This girl was fighting this boy. And so I got between them. I split them up, and I tried to talk to her, and she lunged it. She hit him again. She went through me, like went by me and hit him again. So to get her off him, I hit her across the face. I know I shouldn't have done that, but I was trying to get them, separated. So I said, look, I'm sorry about that. But I said, you kept jumping forward and hitting him. I had to, separate you guys. So anyway, she went to the principal and told him I had hit her. And he came to me, and he had the girl with him, and he told me that, that what I did was against the law, and he can call the police and have me arrested for assault and battery. So I told him what happened about the riot scene that was going on in the auditorium, and how this girl was really jumping on this boy and beating him up, and I was trying to separate them. So the principal didn't believe me, so he decided to go around to the other teachers and ask them, was there anything unusual that happened in the auditorium? Now, the other teachers weren't aware of this. They were all in their rooms when this was going on. So, of course, they told him that they had no idea. So he said, he says, I spoke to all the other teachers. Nobody said there was any problems in the auditorium. And he says, now, I can call the police. And just as he said that, one of the parents came up to me, goes, excuse me, you're the principal? He goes, yeah. He goes, my son, I live across the street. My son just ran home to me. He said there was a whole riot that was happening in the auditorium, and there were no teachers there, and kids were getting into fights, and they were beating each other up. He says, now what's going on here? And the principal, he says, sir, he says, please go to the office and wait. I'll be happy to discuss this with you in a minute. So he didn't even look. He's standing there like he's seen a ghost. Like just looking straight ahead with his mouth open. And so I smiled and went like this and said, now, I said, if the young lady thinks I hit her, I am very sorry. I'm willing to apologize. But I was just putting out my arm to try to stop her, and she ran into it. And so he turns around to the girl and he says to her, honey, and she starts to cry, and he puts his arm around her and he says, honey, please, we're just trying to show you how to behave. Now go back to class and be a good girl. And he says, you can go back to your room now, Miss Stickman.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Did they give you problems because you were white, or you were semi-white?
I,
So
I,
like,
semi-white and Jewish.
yeah,
I wonder about that. I really do. I mean, and also when the sad thing was, you actually had administrators. I mean, here teachers were having a hard enough time controlling their classes, and administrators would come into the room and yell at the teacher in front of the kids.
was there? You only were there for like a year, right?
Yes, I was there for a year, and I said, this system is not good for me.
I think it's not good for anybody.
The system is, it's good, and it did not make me a good teacher. I think as a matter of fact, I think it was one of the reasons why I had a hard time when I switched to the yeshiva system, actually becoming the type of, like the type of controlled teacher. By the way, the teachers later on, when they found out what happened, they didn't know what the story was, and they apologized to me and said, had we known what the whole story was with you and the principal, we would have stood up for you.
Yeah, it's that's where it's just like I keep on thinking about, you know, just inner city schooling system where it's just doomed to failure because it's rotten to the core. And it needs to be reevaluated because I know like in Baltimore now, I think it's like 1.5 is the average GPA of a high school graduate in Baltimore City. If I'm not mistaken, I can quickly check it up. But it's really bad. And I think it's just like just so many systems have so much red tape that it's impossible to do. Like even just talking about, Baltimore City. Did you know Baltimore City couldn't run their own police force? It had to be run by the state of Maryland for the past 150 years until this law that finally got passed for this year.
I had no idea about that.
Yeah. So Baltimore City basically didn't have any. Baltimore City didn't have any control over their police force. They had to do a red tape thing where they had to get approved by the state of Maryland to go ahead and act on various issues for the city of Baltimore. They couldn't act quickly enough. So, so now I think I don't know when it's going to be in effect. I think starting, I guess next year in 2025, they're going to start being able to have more control. I mean, it's pretty bad. Baltimore City, literally just today, I would say about an hour or two ago, an elderly gentleman was just like punched and kicked and thrown out and kicked to the side, and had his car stolen. And it was like maybe about it was maybe about 10-minute walk from me.
Oh my gosh.
And it's just getting wild. Baltimore City is just getting more and more wild, and it's like I remember I was walking I was doing a Shabbos walk with my wife and kid, and we bumped into this one woman, and we had a conversation, and she asked us like how like as Baltimoreans, like as born and bred Baltimoreans, how do we manage to handle all of this violence that's going on? Because she got carjacked and the guy almost ran away with her kid in the car. And she luckily she begged him and pleaded with him, and he finally just gave her kid, and he ran away with the car. And it's just so bad. And it's just
where did this happen?
Again, another like 15-20 minutes away from me.
Gosh.
Walk wise. I'm saying walk, maybe about a mile or two away.
So did they ever find the car?
They found the car. Person got away with it. It's just slap on the wrist, if not if even getting caught. The city police are just, under low. There's low amounts of people in the police force, and so when they asked me how do we manage it, and I'm like, I just get used to it. Like I'm just used to Baltimore.
I remember when this one of my principals, my Hebrew school principals, I had a chance to to meet. I think it was at the time, Etienne Khani, your two older sisters. They were little at the time. They're like 7 and 5 years old, and she was talking to them. And after she was talking, just meeting them, afterwards she says to me, "Boy, are your kids streetwise?" I said, "They have to be."
And that's the sad frustration thing with when it comes to, Baltimore and other tough locations.
I remember when I was in 4th grade, I used to carry a knife.
Mm.
And I remember when I would walk to school, going past like if there was a big tree, I would stop from a distance and look to make sure there was nobody on the other side of the tree that was stalking me. I was like 10 years old.
Did you ever get stalked?
Thank God, no. Thank God, no.
Did you ever almost get kidnapped?
Not Dafka kidnapped, but I did have a run-in with a pervert.
Oh, what happened?
I'm not going to go into details, but
all right, never mind.
Yeah,
yeah. We talked about this in a previous episode, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, never mind then. Okay.
But I did
you'd hit a fight back.
I used my street smarts. What can I tell you? Yeah,
yes.
I was very, very lucky. Told them that my parents were waiting for me, and if I didn't get home right away, they'd call the police. And he asked me, "Can we be back here tomorrow?" I go, "Of course."
All right, crazy people. Oh yeah. So, when you were teaching in the 70s and the 80s, I guess, did the teaching methods stay the same, or did it eventually started going one way or another?
Well, I can't talk about other teachers per se, but for myself, I became much more reward oriented, positive and reward, giving the kids points, good behavior, good answers, and giving actual rewards. Like I mentioned to you about my fudge that I baked for them. And you were upset that I never baked you any fudge.
Yeah, you never baked me any fudge.
Yes.
You made nothing, no effort whatsoever.
But I promise you, next time, this is Hashem, next time I come to Baltimore, I'll buy you a whole big thing of fudge from 7 Mile Market.
But I don't want it. I want it homemade. I want the blood, sweat, and tears. It tastes better. Did your mother ever make like a special dessert?
Question. She made a terrific peach cake. I loved her upside down peach cakes.
Interesting.
She would, and the thing was, I thought they were so delicious. And I made them once for you guys, and you didn't like it at all. I never made it again.
Oh,
so sad. What it was is you line the bottom of the pan with brown sugar. You take fresh peaches and cut them either, like slices or whatever, and layer them on the bottom over the brown sugar. Then you make a regular yellow cake batter, and you put the cake put the cake batter over this whole thing, over the pan, bake it in the oven, 350, half hour, take it out, and you and what you do is you take the cake pan, when you take it out of the oven, you have like something on the bottom, like maybe a large like some sort of large square pan that you can turn it, and basically you turn it upside down. You turn it upside down to cool it, and you keep it there until it's cooled, and then you take the pan off, and you have this beautiful pattern of peaches, of brown, like glazed peaches, and the sap from the peaches mixed with the caramelized brown sugar seeps through the cake.
Did your grandmother Did your grandmother have anything special that she made?
Not my father's mother, but my mother's mother was like a was very she sewed beautifully. She sewed some skirts and dresses for me. My mother, she baked very, very nicely. She made her own gefilte fish, chicken soup, gefilte fish, all this stuff. One of the things that she made, well, she made these like cinnamon pastries with sugar and raisins in them. And me being the kid, of course, I would take the pastry apart to eat the delicious sweet raisins that were mixed with the sugar.
Oh, that's funny.
Another thing she made was, I told you about the tegelach.
No.
I tell you, I haven't seen tegelach in years. What tegelach was, let's put it this way, you had to have a good, maybe that's why so many of my grandparents had false teeth. They would break your teeth. But it was, you had a pot of honey, boiling honey. And then you would take dough, like challah dough, whatever, like regular dough, and you would make a knot out of it, like a ball or a knot, knot it up, ball it up, and you would put it in the boiling honey. And then after it boiled for I don't know how many minutes, and you would took it out and put it on a like a cooling, like parchment paper or something to cool it, probably parchment paper or aluminum foil to sit there and cool it. And the balls were they were saturated with honey, but hard.
You'd use lard?
Hard.
Oh.
Hard. HARD.
I couldn't hear you for a second. Oh, it's hard.
So one time, my bubby, and I've said this at the other podcast, my bubby unfortunately never learned how to read and write, because we said in those days in Russia, the Tsarist government made sure that the lower classes did not get educated because they were afraid if they got educated and learned how to read, that they would organize a revolution, which they did anyway. So for all that. So my bubby never learned how to read and write. So she took this there was my mother told me that one day she came into our houses, my aunt's house where my bubby lived and my cousins lived was right next to our house. We bought the houses right next to each other. So my bubby comes into the kitchen and sits down and starts to cry. And my mother asked my bubby, well, what's the matter? What happened? Why are you crying? She couldn't read, and she took the flour, and she didn't know it wasn't regular flour. It said self-rising flour. And she tried to make the tegelach with the self-rising flour, and it turned into dough soup. Dough and honey soup.
Oh, God.
She was devastated.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Oh, gosh.
Later on, though, I tried to work with her to read, at least teach her Aleph Beis, to teach her how to read Hebrew, and she caught it very quickly. And the problem was that I wasn't able to do it on a regular basis. But everyone said that had my bubby had been an educated woman, she probably would have been a brilliant mathematician or something like that. The woman, she taught herself math. She taught herself she could add up numbers very quickly. She was they think that she could have been a mathematical genius had she had an education. She could figure out, she could make a dress without a pattern, just by measuring you and looking at you, and she could put together a dress just by she used an old Singer machine from the early 1900s that had the pedal on the bottom. You push the pedal and it got the wheels running. So while you're sewing, you're getting a workout. That's the machine I learned on.
That's awesome.
And if something went wrong, the machine was broken, she knew how to fix it. She could figure it out. She could figure out how to fix things just by looking at them.
That's awesome.
My mother told me that she was the one that made all the repairs in the house.
Oh,
In fact, my Zadie, her husband, my Zadie, if there was a lamp that was broken, he would bring it over to her. Can you please fix the lamp for me? She could figure out the wires.
That's
So, like
amazing.
a lamp, she could figure out where the wires went, which way, where, how to put the
Thank you for listening to Jewish Boy Calls His Mother. Please comment and subscribe on our Facebook page, YouTube channel, and Instagram. I would greatly appreciate it, and my mother would too.